Free speech is under attack right now, and this is something that every American should be worried about. And if you're just tuning in, there is a chance that maybe you haven't seen the hours of testimony on Capitol Hill today where Newsmax was actually in the spotlight. But you might be aware of the story since we've been talking about it this past couple of days. House Democrats are asking a dozen cable, satellite, and streaming distribution centers to stop. That's right. Stop carrying conservative networks like Newsmax.
I never thought I'd see the day that this would happen.
I know.
But these two California Democrats in the House of Representatives called for the hearing because of what they call the spread of disinformation. And of course, it's only being spread on the right. It's safe to say that this is clearly, as you put it, a infringement on our constitutional rights. Now, Reason.com, they laid out the argument well in an article that they published, saying, quote, the First Amendment prohibits Congress from infringing on free speech, and that includes the freedom to provide companies to decide what kind of speech appears on their platform. Politicians are not in charge of setting the parameters, my apologies, for acceptable speech on the internet and television. That responsibility devolves to individuals, companies, and individual viewers. I literally am speechless at the idea that we have to have a conversation about members of Congress trying to deplatform channels, news channels, on cable providers because they don't like their political perspective.
It's insane. I mean, this is what sets America apart.
Yeah.
The fact that we have the freedom, that Americans have the option to expose themselves to differing views, to have the battle of ideas. I mean, you look at communist countries and state-run media, you get one point of view. And that's, again, what sets us apart. And when you take that away from Americans, every American should be concerned. They should speak up, use their voice to say, I want to be able to be exposed to all these other ideas. And this isn't fighting for one network under the other. It's fighting for all of them for the freedom of speech.
Yeah, I mean, you don't hear folks on the right trying to cancel out MSNBC and CNN. We may disagree with them or not watch them. But that's the whole idea of competition. You put good ideas out there and you let people do it. But the two California Democrats who originally wrote this letter that calling on the cable companies, Congressman Gerald McInerney and Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, they're both from California. They received donations, guess what, from all the cable companies that they're doing. This was reported by the Media Research Center. It's pretty astonishing. Take a look at this. Congresswoman Eshoo, she received $10,000 from Google in the last congressional cycle, $6,000 from Verizon, which owns Files, right? $5,000 from Amazon, and so on. You can see the list there. And here we have the donations given to Congressman McInerney. His top donor was Spectrum, coming in at $10,000. He also received PAC campaign cash from AT&T, Comcast, and Google. So you got to wonder, you know, is there a correlation? Are they doing the bidding there?
Yeah, definitely eyebrow raising. The ranking member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee where this hearing was, Congressman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, said today during the hearing she had never seen such an obvious attack on our First Amendment rights since she started on that committee. Take a listen.
Anyone who values free speech and a free press should be worried. Elected officials using their platform to pressure private companies to censor media outlets they disagree with? That sounds like actions from the Chinese Communist Party, not duly elected representatives of the United States Congress.
Couldn't have said that better myself. Well, let's bring in the Congresswoman herself. Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers joins us now. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
So I watched a lot of this. I can't say I watched the whole thing. But tell me, from your standpoint, what were the biggest takeaways from today's hearing?
I think the biggest takeaway was that we had elected representatives, elected officials that were using their platform, their roles to pressure private companies to censor speech based upon political opinion or their political philosophy. And it really was a direct attack on our First Amendment. In all the years that I've been on Energy and Commerce, this committee, I've never seen a more direct attack on the First Amendment, on freedom of speech right now. And it just plays into this whole woke mob cancel culture that we see across the board in America today.
You know, Congresswoman, the craziest thing about all this is the Constitution is so clear on this matter, saying that Congress shall make no law regarding free speech. And now, as you mentioned, you have Congress members intimidating cable providers not to carry stations. It's starting to go down a very dangerous path.
that's why this hearing today was so troubling. You know, we all agree that what happened on January 6th was wrong. And we all need to know what the facts and the truth is. That's not what this hearing was about. We need to be working in a bipartisan way on that front. But today's hearing was really an affront to freedom of speech. It was, you know, this is one of our fundamental values as Americans. We cherish this. This is part of our personal rights and liberties that's been fought for through the ages. And to have elected officials that are pressuring private companies based upon their own political ideology, that is extremely troubling.
It is. And the thing that's so interesting to me is I've had my bouts, if you will, with mainstream media, MSNBC, the Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, you name it. But it would seem to me that, you know, these folks, your colleagues, focused entirely on conservative media. They frankly ignored everything that happens with the left-wing media folks like CNN and MSNBC and what they have said or not said or spread in the past, whether it's their guests or their hosts.
True. There's countless examples where there's been misinformation spread across the board, across different media outlets. Today was really, I think, highlighting an abuse of power by elected representatives when they're using their positions to try to censor certain political speech. It is absolutely protected under the First Amendment. It is part of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights that we protect the rights of any person to their political beliefs, their opinions, and you know, and it just goes to this larger notion that unless you agree with the radical left ideology, then your opinion just doesn't count, and that you should be silenced, or you certainly shouldn't have the battle of ideas. It's really frightening what's going on in the House of Representatives today under Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and I feel like this was just the latest example where the Democrats are out to silence any objectors, anyone who doesn't fall into the line with their agenda right now and their political ideology.
So you had this hearing today. Where do you go from here?
Well, we'll see. We push back really hard as Republicans and defenders of the First Amendment. And I think the rally cry is to people all over this country to make sure that they are making their voices heard. I know that people feel like they are being silenced and they're living in fear of losing their jobs, or, it is a frightening situation in that regard. But I would just encourage people all across this country, we need to gird up the Constitution. We need to gird up our Bill of Rights. These are our fundamental personal rights and liberties that we've enjoyed since the founding of this country. It's been a fight throughout the ages, and it's a fight that continues. But it is a fight worth having.
Congressman, let me ask you one last question. You said we're fighting for the First Amendment, and that's what I always feel like as conservatives. We don't have to like the other side, but we believe that everybody gets protected under the First Amendment. But there are a lot of folks that are saying we've got to stop doing this and we've got to fight back in the same way. So they would say, well, we've got to start canceling out the MSNBCs, the CNNs, the New York Times. Where do you come down on that?
I come down on the side of more speech being better. Let's have the battle of ideas. I believe that is the American way. We believe fundamentally in the freedom of speech. We believe in the importance of a free, independent press. But the press also needs to be doing their jobs. And that was part of the hearing today, was a focus on the importance of a reporter or the news outlet doing their job also. But we need to, I believe, that freedom of speech means a freedom for everyone to have their own political opinions, have the battle, have that debate, and ultimately that's what happens in the House of Representatives. Yeah. That's the way that our form of government works.
I wish that was the case. I know you're fighting for it. I wish your Democratic colleagues felt the same way. Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers, thank you for being here, and thanks for fighting for freedom. All right, we've talked a lot about how the left loves to preach unity and compassion. They do it all the time. But they're also the first ones to silence their political opponents. Big Democrats and big tech, they love to talk about misinformation. They're afraid of hearing the truth, when it doesn't fit their narrative. They idolize experts like Dr. Fauci, who's been flip-flopped on migration practices in the past, for the past years. Take a look at some of this.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. Putting a mask on yourself is more to prevent you from infecting someone else. And if everybody does that, we're each protecting each other. Maybe I should put 2 masks on. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's no data that indicates that that is going to make a difference.
Wait a minute. Are you a double masker, Dr. Fauci? It looked like you are.
Well, I have. In fact, I have used it occasionally.
Now, look, the beauty of a free press is that it can expose these inconsistencies, right? And that's why we must fight for free speech. Well, joining us now to discuss all of this, what's going on Capitol Hill, the need for free speech and a free press, is the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Devin Nunes. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Sean, great to be with you guys. Thanks a lot.
You know, CNN has taken what Dr. Fauci said as gospel, even though he's flip-flopped. And I know that the virus has evolved, so I'm not necessarily saying that it's all his fault. But over the last year, he has spread some what they would define as misinformation. If you use the same scope that they look at everything else through, it's funny how if someone says something and changes their view that they like, well, then that's just fine. If they don't like it, then it's considered misinformation.
You know, this standard has now been set forth. I don't agree with this standard from Congressman McNerney and Congresswoman Eshoo trying to silence essentially conservative media. I am confused under this standard they've set forth why they're not concerned with other networks that are spreading misinformation. People like CNN playing patty cake with their brother Andrew, Chris Cuomo playing patty cake with his brother Andrew Cuomo when nursing home debacle is going on, nursing home gate. And then also this, when the New York Post story came out about Hunter Biden, and they either ignore it altogether, act like it wasn't real news, or say that it was misinformation. Why aren't those people held to that standard?
Well, look, this is all. I could take your whole show and talk about this, but this is a slippery slope. Okay?
Yes.
We started out. I mean, one of the darkest days is when they completely obliterated a company from social media, banned the president of the United States, and look, a lot of conservatives and Republicans have been either getting shadow banned or kicked off these platforms for a few years now. And so, but you fast forward to this slope gets really slippery because now they're targeting essentially all that's left, right? Because there's no, and I've said this numerous times, Republicans are wasting their time on the existing social media platforms. Like, unless you just want to go on there and you get something off your chest and type something on there. But if you think other conservatives are able to see this, they're not. And I've warned all my colleagues about this. But so what's left? We only have a few cable TV shows. I mean, there's some podcasters, things like that, but you've got Newsmax, you've got OAN and Fox News. And other than that, everything else, the legacy media, it's not just that it's partisan, they're essentially a mouthpiece of the left. And so, look, that's why I'm coming on your show. That's why I love coming on Newsmax.
You actually have some firsthand experience with this. You actually sued CNN for defamation. It seems like your California colleagues, Democratic colleagues, just want to snuff out the competition here. They don't want the competition. They just want to uplift CNN and MSNBC, but they also don't want the American people to have the opportunity to have opposing a view.
Well, look, make no mistake about this. CNN will still have its day. I will still have my day in court. So it's just one step. We're continuing what I've said for the last 4 years. I've been slandered relentlessly, and my commitment maintains to be true, and that is that if you slander me, I will take you to court. So what's happened in a lot of these libel cases, the appellate court ends up overruling. And so hopefully that is what will happen. You know, specifically the CNN suit, you guys may remember this, but this was right at the height of impeachment, and they accused me of going to Vienna and doing something nefarious about digging up dirt on Biden with some crazy Russian people that I had never heard of before. I asked them to take it down. They refused. I made public statements that this was wrong. They should remove it. And then, eventually I had to go to court, and I had to provide pictures that I really didn't want to have to provide, but I was actually in Libya at the time. So, you can't make this stuff up.
One might call that disinformation.
No, they're the kings of disinformation. I mean, you can't get more slanderous than that, of accusing me of being somewhere where I'm not. Now, look, I like I was watching the X-Men movies with my daughter over the weekend, and there's like teleporting and things like that. But look, this isn't the movies. This is real life. I cannot be in two places at the same time. Now, evidently, one court doesn't think that that's the case, so we're going to work with the appellate courts, and hopefully this will get reversed, and hopefully CNN will have to pay the price for their disinformation. So it's really going to take, the courts are going to have to start to stand up. The legislative process has been corrupted. Clearly, Biden doesn't know what the hell's going on. The courts have got to step in and wrong a lot of these, right a lot of these wrongs.
Not only the two places at once, but early on, you were a leader in a lot of the stuff that was going on in Russiagate and proved right when everything came to light. So it's interesting. There's a pattern of this. But the thing that I think is interesting is the folks on the left, your colleagues, Democratic colleagues from California, they took all this money from the likes of AT&T and Comcast. And the question is, if the shoe were on the other foot, if this was Devin Nunes, when you were still chairman and the Republicans were in the majority, trying to ban CNN and MSNBC, they would be saying, you're just doing this as a payoff to all of your big campaign donors. Why isn't it fair game to go after them and say the same thing that they're doing now?
Well, look, that's because Republicans believe in free speech and the Democrats truly do not. That's what's going on here. Look, this is a very frustrating time to be in Washington. I'm sitting here in the Capitol right now. We're surrounded by double fencing that goes on for blocks, military guard units that are out here, and razor wire on top of the fence. Now, the only good thing about this is that at least if they can lock these gates up, it'll keep all the circus animals inside, meaning my colleagues and those of us that are here. Because if we go outside, it becomes very, very dangerous. And, look, something else just happened today. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this yet. We're still investigating it. But I believe that Twitter has blocked CPAC from being able to post onto Twitter. So now if you're sending out the links on Twitter to the CPAC organization, as of a few hours ago, it's being blocked. So we're continuing to investigate that.
The lengths to which they're going is unreal. Right? It's this cancel culture. I thought the Twitter stuff was bad. And then literally these letters that your colleagues on the Democratic side sent just blew my mind that folks didn't have massive outrage that this was a violation of our basic freedoms. But Congressman Nunes, you know firsthand what this is like. You've faced it. You've fought back against it. I'd love to make sure you come back when you have an update because you're out there fighting the fight for all of us. And that's really what matters.
Well, look, I guarantee you I will be back on, Sean. I love coming on your show. But hopefully you'll still be on the cable channels.
Oh, we will.
That's going to be the issue.
We will.
You do have a good, but you can get the app, the Newsmax app. It's very, very good. I have it on my
That's a good backup,
iPhone.
but we'll be here. Don't worry. Thank you, Congressman Nunes. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Emma Reckenberg here. If you like this video, there's a whole lot more to see on Newsmax TV. You can watch for free right here on our YouTube live stream and be the first one here each time our experts break down real news. Just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon, and stay with us on America's fastest growing cable news channel, Newsmax TV.